Knon 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227. Or extension 233. For more information, go to knon.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.
And good afternoon, and welcome to Lambda Weekly. And Pattie's looking at me. Is he going to say good morning or good afternoon? It is afternoon.
Yes.
So
thank you.
Good. Afternoon.
David's oriented to time, place, and person.
I'm Dave Taffet. I'm here in the studio with the late Pattie Fink and Larone Landis. And our guests today are Viv and Louise. Well,
hi.
Do I need to say more? Vivian Armstrong and Louise Young, for those of you who aren't as old as Larone is, and aren't in the community. Viv and Louise are two lesbian activists who have been active in the community since the late 1800s, I believe.
Yes, indeed.
Some of the things that they've done...
You know, the wagon train was rough.
It probably was. Mm-hmm. So, but you made it.
But we got here as fast as we could.
You did. Some of the things they did, they were the first Texas couple to get civilly united in Vermont. Right. And then they got married in California. And how many times have you been married?
Actually, just once in California.
Oh, okay.
We thought about doing the state-by-state tour, mm-hmm. but...
you decided your marriage will stick?
HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, said that that might be overkill.
And besides,
somebody needs
we
to do
just
it,
had to
though.
sit around and wait for our 08 marriage to get, finalized. So when the Supreme Court made it final, we didn't have any more worries.
Right. You were one of the couples that got married before Prop 8 in that
right.
6-month window when marriage was legal in California.
Correct.
Yeah. Good.
See, now I was told, Louise, that, I would, I had no problems doing a ceremony getting married, but I just wanted to do it when it was legal.
Mm-hmm.
And how long have you two been together?
43 years.
Wow. So how has
congratulations.
Marriage, how has marriage changed your relationship?
Well, I don't actually...
It's been so long we've forgotten what it was like.
Well, but here's one. This year we filed a joint income tax return, a federal joint income tax return
mm-hmm.
for the first time. We did file, when we lived in Vermont for 2 years, we filed state mm-hmm. income tax, joint state income tax return.
Yeah.
How did that feel? Because I was able to do the same thing, and I loved it because I'm always doing both of our taxes. So it was kind of a relief.
You only have to do one.
I just have to do one. But it was just kind of cool. I could put both of our information on. It's like it felt like we were finally being recognized.
It did. I will agree with that. It was really an amazing feeling because it was a federal institution, albeit the Internal Revenue Service, mm-hmm. that was recognizing our relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was a whole lot better than when we retired and having to deal with Social Security before any of the Supreme Court decision, because that was extremely frustrating.
And frustrating in what way?
Well, having to be denied.
Oh.
You
mm-hmm.
check off that you're married on the box when you end up applying for your benefits,
mm-hmm.
and then they give you a call and tell you that they're going to take it out of there and make you single again and put you in a little box that you got married, and maybe they'll deal with it later mm-hmm. when it comes to benefits. So that was extremely insulting to the
So
point of
would the
tears.
two of you be making more money, or does it come out to be the same amount of money if Social Security?
Well, in terms of Social Security, right now we're
alive, and so
we're alive and we're getting our own Social Security. Mm-hmm. But right now, were one of us to die, Social Security does not recognize same-sex marriage yet.
So
now,
no survivor benefits.
Yeah, it's in that kind of in-between iffy stage that they haven't worked everything out like the Internal Revenue Service has, so that still we are single in the eyes of Social Security, but we're married in the eyes of the Internal Revenue Service.
Do you know what I think is interesting here and so odd? It takes more work to worry about little things like, well, they're same sex, they're opposite sex, they were married here, they live here.
Right.
It's so much easier, and this is what what Internal Revenue did. They said, marriage is marriage. Oh, you're married? You file as married. Period. End of story. No discussion. I don't care who these two people are or what sex they are. They're married.
Right.
Period.
Right.
And that was easy.
You're right, David, and the fact of the matter is, when you fill out the forms, say for Social Security benefits, potential survivor benefits, they say you must tell the truth. So with that in mind, we checked the block that said married.
'Cause you are.
Because we have.
You're more married than a lot of others. With
And
your
we
civil
have.
union and your marriage.
Right. We have a marriage certificate.
Sure.
That's signed, sealed, and delivered. And
That's no different than a heterosexual
No, everybody
marriage
else that was
certificate.
in line that day got the same thing we did.
Yeah.
so here's the thing, that you have to represent yourself in a way that you are not, in order to comply. And we pointed it out, and even the agents that we talked to would say, well, I know it's, this isn't.
I'm not going to perjure myself.
Right.
We're married.
Yeah, we're married, and they were saying, well, I think it'll be worked out soon. And as a matter of fact, they made I guess they have a little notes field.
Yeah, there's a comment. There are comments box. So our marriage is in the comments box, so that later on though they can see that we were honest at the time, and that our marriage was there, and if they want a copy of the document, they can have that too. But it's just it was really easy, it seemed like, for the Department of Defense, for Chuck Hagel to just go in there and say, the military, y'all are, you're in line, with all of the policies. It was easier for the IRS, I think, to just change a couple things on their forms and do it. And,
Right.
Like anything else, it's easier to get money than it is to give it away.
And it's not even changing a couple of boxes. Well, I guess because it's not husband and wife, it's spouse and spouse that they had to
Right.
change. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So they did have to change something.
But it's almost a don't ask, don't tell, in terms of being honest.
It is.
It's really, I agree, it's incredibly insulting to say, no, well, you have to pretend that you're not married for our purposes.
Right.
It is insulting, it's demeaning.
It is demeaning, and we didn't, we wouldn't do it. We were told that we had to do it. So,
Well, and the same thing was true with Medicare benefits.
right.
I mean, I went round and round with them when Louise was still working, and we had domestic partner benefits, and I was trying to, they were telling me that I had to pay another $100 or whatever the fee was that year for the Part B of the outpatient benefits under Medicare, because they did not recognize the insurance that came from the domestic partner benefits. So in essence, we're paying for both.
Right.
And that's a penalty.
That's
Right.
insane.
Yeah,
That's
you pay
insane.
You pay $1,200 more just because you have to.
It's
Or
ridiculous.
you pay a penalty if you don't sign it.
Just before we went on the air,
Wow.
the number one
Yeah, that's
argument
awful.
against same-sex marriage is that same-sex marriages are going to ruin heterosexual marriage as it's existed since biblical times. Have you been keeping track of how many marriages you've actually ruined personally?
No,
We've been to more weddings since, my nieces and nephews have gotten older.
And those are straight weddings mostly, huh?
but I will tell you this, David. I read the New York Times style section every weekend, every Sunday, and I haven't noticed that the wedding section has been getting remarkably smaller. since same-sex marriage began to be recognized. As a matter of fact,
I was
seems to be
just
getting
wondering.
bigger.
Just wondering, because that's the number one argument. Two cases were heard by the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals this week, and the judge, who's a Republican who was nominated by Ronald Reagan, so it's a very conservative judge, wasn't taking the state's case at all. In fact, he was getting furious at the solicitors general from Indiana and Wisconsin. He was fabulous. There were a couple of things that he said. He called the anti-gay arguments silly nonsense. This is a conservative, a right-wing conservative, because what he was doing was he was looking at the law, looking at the arguments, and they were garbage. One of the arguments had to do with adoption. And he said, well, since your state allows gay couples to adopt, aren't those kids better if their parents are married? Aren't there a whole series of benefits that flow from that? Yes, yes, yes. So what are you arguing for? And furious. The Wisconsin one, when he was speaking, the yellow light went on, which means your time is up. So one of the other judges jumped in and said, you're not hiding behind that yellow light. Answer the question. So we know how the Seventh Court is going to come out.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Well, going back to what the question you posed to Louise and Viv, is how many marriages have they ruined? And he asked the question, how is letting gay couples getting married going to stop heterosexual couples from getting married? And they couldn't answer. And his response was, funny.
Well, when they were in their discussion of adoption, he said, well, why isn't Indiana then criminalizing, the word he used was fornication, meaning these heterosexuals who are having sex, producing kids that gay people have to raise? Why aren't you criminalizing that? Not just saying working against it, criminalizing it.
Well, because it's been banned and made illegal for us to marry. So it actually would be criminal for us, I suppose, in the eyes of many, including our own Attorney General, that we're somehow criminals if we attempt to marry.
Right. Here was another question that I liked that he asked. Why does Indiana allow sterile people to marry?
Perfect question. If that's their argument, their argument, number one argument is marriage is for procreation. Well, if you clearly cannot have a child biologically, why are you allowed to get married?
Well, our current Attorney General seems to have a similar opinion.
And his amicus brief is filled with procreation
is the purpose, and the state has an interest in that. And I was going, really?
Because we don't have enough people here.
I mean, either way.
We can't keep up with building schools. They open a brand new school, and there are more classrooms that are in portable classrooms than in the new building because the population is growing so fast. Yeah, we have a real interest in increasing the population more.
Right.
I'd like to just interject one thought, though. Vivian and I have been activists for more than 40 years, and I have not seen one issue that has changed so quickly as the public opinion on gay marriage. I've not seen any issue within our own community or related to GLBT rights that has turned around so quickly. And it still amazes me.
What do you attribute to that change?
I think
quick change.
I think it's better information, because a lot of people think that we already have protections from getting fired from our job, which we do not, particularly in states like Texas. But I think that the marriage has been more common. People know that we can't get married.
I think it's probably information, but I also think that as more and more people come out to their friends, neighbors, and family, co-workers, that it makes all the difference in the world.
But I love my son, And you know what? I really love his partner, too.
Yes, exactly. And that has changed.
I know I'm supposed to hate them because I was taught that, but I really love them.
Right. And I want my son, my daughter, to have all the rights of my other children. Right. And so I think it's been the fact that more and more people are coming out, and it's not being a big deal.
Well, I think a lot of it, too, has to do with, I think, the immediate leaps and bounds that we saw, particularly in the Democratic Party, was a real leadership from the president, where he stepped up and supported us. And we saw the NAACP, we saw LULAC, we saw NALEO, several groups, labor, step up and join him in that. And I remember at the 2012 Democratic National Convention, the entire delegation, not just the LGBT delegates, but the entire delegation of the state of Minnesota wore No on 2 shirts one evening. And it just felt you could feel it in the Democratic Party. And you could feel it in Houston when we had the convention, and it was in the platform in support of marriage equality with no opposition whatsoever. I mean, I really felt it. And so I think, states and families have moved it forward. But golly, having that leadership at the top, I think that must make a difference.
That was Minnesota, but at the Democratic Convention, the state Democratic Convention here in Dallas this summer, this caucus met in this little room, this caucus in that little room. But the Stonewall Caucus, in order to accommodate it, took the main convention floor, and every candidate was there, and every delegate was there. It was not just gay people. Everybody wanted to go to the Stonewall Caucus. That was fascinating.
I think another thing I think played a big role in it is politically is just getting the discussion out there for people to even talk about it. And I think Gavin Newsom played a huge role in that, and by his civil activism, what he did in San Francisco, and that made national news, and it stayed in the news for a while, and it really got the dialogue going, and it hasn't gone away since.
Well, I think another big factor was the demise of don't ask, don't tell in the military.
Yep.
That when you change the culture in the U.S. military and it goes rather smoothly, then that's a population that, that's a big breakthrough. Mm-hmm. That is more of a typical macho population.
When you have generals who can say, well, I'm a lesbian, when the president appoints the undersecretary of the Army, it's somebody that you worked with at Raytheon, Louise,
yes.
Amanda Simpson, who, when I interviewed her, talking about transgender issues, she was, really loving about it. When she was talking about rocket systems and other things,
Absolutely.
It's like so over my head. It's like, I know why he appointed her. God, is she qualified, but but what a great role model that she can be out and be in that position.
Absolutely. I mean, Amanda is truly a rocket scientist. Mm-hmm. And it's just, again, the fact that we were given our rights and the sky didn't fall. I think, as that happens more and more, then it changes people's minds, if not hearts.
So when Massachusetts, which is a small state, legalized same-sex marriage, and everybody predicted, well, that's the end of marriage in Massachusetts, and then a funny thing happened. Massachusetts's divorce rate became the lowest divorce rate in the country. Number 2 was Vermont with their civil unions.
And then Vermont was the first state to come behind that after the civil unions and have a public vote on marriage that was successful. And that just shows you that the work that they did it's a smaller state, but the work that they did ended up really where people had those small town dialogues, and if you talk to people enough and they understand the issues, then they're supportive and they would go to the polls and vote for it.
So during those 10 years, people who had never thought about the issue. I think a lot of the move has been among people who just never thought of the issue.
Right.
So people looked at Massachusetts, Vermont, now California, then Iowa. Oh well, nothing particularly happened. So.
Well, and I think it's kind of interesting too. We normally see the progression as, hate crime law legislation, and then accommodations and employment, and then we see relationship recognition. But this has really turned itself on its head. I mean, our whole movement, because we now have more marriage equality states than we have states with protections in the workplace.
Right.
Which is kind of crazy.
We need to take a break. You're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 Knon FM. Our guests are Louise Young and Viv Armstrong. We'll be back with more right after this.
This is Jake Winters from Leicester, England, and I listen to Lambda Weekly on Knon 89.3 FM.
And welcome back to Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet here in the studio with the late Pattie Fink and Larone Landis, and our guests are Viv and Louise. We're just talking newsy stuff. You had a story.
Well, this is a story I think everybody has seen. If you haven't, you got to go find it. There's a teenager, 19-year-old young man from Georgia, who came out to his very Christian family, and the response was not nice, to put it mildly. But he was smart enough to record it. So
what he said, I saw an extended interview with him, and he said he knew right away, this isn't going to go very well. I better record this.
And it didn't. It turned into a big verbal attack. Then it turned into a physical attack. So
by his own family
by
members.
his own family members. So this was proof. This is visual proof that we in the community already know happens every day. But I think this has taken a lot of maybe some of our allies or just people who just don't think about the issue, taking them by surprise. So they kicked this young man out, and thankfully our community has responded, and he has raised a lot of money to help take care of him. Support the guy.
So far, he did a GoFundMe.
Yes.
He's raised $90,000.
$90,000.
Now he's saying that he's going to donate some of this money back, which is great. I mean, good, loving kid. It shows what kind of how he learned the good things from his family and filtered out the bad. But he needs to take that money and use it for a college education.
He really should.
And, and you can make your donation once you graduate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
People want you to succeed. That's why they're giving you this money, so that you're not homeless like so many kids
Right,
are.
or that you don't get an education because your family won't help you.
Right.
Watching the video is so emotional to watch, because on the one hand I was really proud of the young guy because he was standing up for himself by himself. But that was also a big reminder of what it's like to be young and gay. You are out there alone with nobody having your back. In school, most of the time in your families. I mean, he was totally by himself, and the situation actually could have been a lot worse. But that was just
if he wasn't so strong.
If he wasn't so strong,
great kid.
he was really defending himself verbally and physically the best that he could, the best that he knew how. So I think it's really important, if you know a young gay individual, take them, just support them, because they most of the times are at the mercy of themselves.
Well, and this family too, I couldn't believe that their stepmother and such were pummeling this kid.
Yes.
And I do admire him for standing up for himself. But I thought the stuff that they were saying was so typical of the South. What will the neighbors think? I mean, that was really kind of the theme of why they wanted him to change.
Yeah, I don't think
and the religious aspect of arguing that, and at the same time beating your child and, like you say, kicking them out.
What religion
like
teaches that?
Religious,
And fleeing the F word and the S word and the F word, all kinds of them.
Constantly. I mean, in one sentence it was like, I love you, and the very next sentence is, but you gotta go. Really? That's love?
Or I'm speaking God's word and F you.
Yes.
And
You
one female member of the family said, I've known you were gay since you were a little bitty baby. Little bitty boy. And I think she did say little bitty. And then he said, well, it's not a choice. And she said, of course it's a choice. Yet she knew.
Yes, she knew.
The
So
time
what?
when he was a little bitty boy. Well,
So what 3 or 4-year-old chooses to be gay
Or straight.
or straight?
What 3 or 4-year-old even knows what that is?
You've known this ever since he was a toddler, but yet he chose it.
yeah. I mean,
Okay.
it just shows. It
Okay, so
shows.
we were talking a little bit before the show about who do we think actually sent all this money? That's a lot of money. This $90,000, that's probably tens of thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of donations from different people. You said, as you were introducing it, people from our community rallied around him. I don't think it was our community so much. I think our community heard this and said, huh, yeah, another one. How many times have I heard this story? I'm glad that kid was smart enough to record it so that people can see that this. I think these were a lot of straight people who saw this and said, well, that's horrible. Is that really what some gay people have to go through? Oh my God, I need to send him $10. It's, you know, not a whole lot of money, but maybe it'll help a little bit. I think it was a whole lot of people who.
And maybe it's a bunch of Rob Portmans. I call it the Rob Portman theory of relative morality, because he was anti-gay
Tell who
until
Rob Portman was.
as a senator, a United States senator, and he was purely anti-gay and pretty vocal about it, and certainly supported all of those right-winger, conservative fright-wingers, I call them, and with his money and votes, until his son came out to him, and suddenly it's a different tune. It's my son. It's my son. I'm going to love him.
Well, but
my son, I'm going to support his marriage.
At least he's supporting him.
Right.
At least he's supporting him and not hiding behind his religion.
But I think it might be a lot of Rob Portmans sending money in and saying, I've got to atone for what I've done. This is one way I can do it.
It
You know?
could be.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I think. I think people from our community, I'm sure, stepped up. I have no question about that. But I think it's a lot of other people who had never quite seen it this horribly disgusting as this family was.
I think one of the biggest slaps in the face about all of this whole story is that they called and left him his family called him and left a voicemail that said, please remove the video. Not, I'm sorry,
Right.
not, I love you.
Right.
Just take down that video.
Yeah.
It's just an extra slap in the face and a slap with their ignorance.
Well,
you know?
it's that same mentality of people who will sign these things to get something on the ballot, but then when it comes out, that's public knowledge. They don't want their name. They want to shield it.
petition.
Yeah, petition.
Petitions.
They want to shield it. Well, if you're so proud about what you did with your son, why would you want to take it down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Petitions are public.
Yeah.
If you're going to sign a petition,
Exactly.
it's public. Public record.
Well, and now
that's
this
what a
video
petition
is.
That's part of the definition of
Yeah.
of that. I want to talk a little bit about John Wiley Price, who we haven't addressed. I did a story this week. I didn't call Larone, but I did talk to you, Pattie. I talked to Viv. I talked to Louise.
Though I do see John Wiley on a regular.
So I need you to. So let's hear your opinion, since
No, I don't have one.
because you work with. The premise of my story was whether or not he's guilty of whatever he's charged with. The evidence has not been released. We don't know what it is. The federal government doesn't file these kinds of things lightly, and we know that. But the gay community better not be gloating about this, because if something happens to him, we've lost somebody who has been an ally over the years. Louise, you've known him since he began his career.
I have probably known County Commissioner John Wiley Price since 1978, and he was one of the first in the African American community of the Democratic Party to support us. He was one of the first, and he really never flinched from that support. And back then, in the late 70s, it was not popular for anybody to support our community. Another supporter, longtime supporter, was former Justice of the Peace Charles Rose. But and there were others, but he was always very supportive. I remember he used a picture that his campaign took of several of us in the gay community holding John Wiley Price yard signs. This was when he was running for constable in 1980, and we were out in front of his house, and we had John Wiley Price yard signs, and he used the brochure.
Now, one thing that I think most people don't realize is we only have a Democratic county court like for the last 2 years. Before that, for 4 years now, it's been 3-2. Now it's 4-1. But before that, it was 1-4.
Yes.
1 Democrat, 4 Republicans. There was going to be no AIDS funding, none, in Dallas County AIDS funding. And some of that money is filtered down from the federal government, but there would have been none had he not been the one to direct the money to the AIDS agencies here.
And he did so, in my view, unwaveringly. In most cases, where
and particularly before the numbers in the African American community started to rise. I mean, he was there, when it was still considered to be a gay white male
I'm talking
disease,
about funding this in the early 90s. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he was for us. I mean, it wasn't.
He saw a health crisis. He saw a need.
A human thing.
And he took care of it. Am I saying with all this, and I'm sure lots of people listening are just going, I can't wait until he's out of office. I hope people in the gay community and the LGBT community are not gloating over this. Because, yes, somebody else will come along who will fill his shoes, I think, at this point. I think we're far enough along.
You mentioned it in the article, but I remember when I first came to Dallas in 1989, and he was whitewashing billboards in South Dallas. The billboards were liquor and cigarettes. And, he said, why are they targeting our community? Why are they all over? Why they don't have this in North Dallas? They don't have this in other areas, but they're targeting the African-American community in South Dallas. And he said, this has got to stop. And people said, oh, it's not a big deal. It's just billboards. And his point, and I take it fully, is that these corporations wouldn't be spending billions of dollars nationwide on advertising on billboards if they didn't work. And so, that was his point. And I was like, wow, this is somebody to watch.
Right. Well, and he's always been a controversial figure, but I think what we're just reminding listeners is he has supported us, and we just need to remember that and let the investigation proceed. But here's a man who supported us when few did.
Right.
Definitely.
And that was the whole point of my article. Just, I hope there's not a whole lot of gloating and oh, good, we're rid of him.
And he's innocent until proven guilty.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Just like Governor Perry is too.
Yes.
And we don't have all the evidence in that case either, because it was not all released. He is not being charged. Perry is not being charged with just trying to get a lesbian district attorney out of office.
He's also not being charged with bribery, which is what he said in New Hampshire.
Yeah, it was what he said he was being charged with.
Yeah, he was mistaken.
Projection, maybe? I don't know.
Poor thing. He doesn't know.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Oops, he couldn't remember the third charge?
When you don't even know what you're being charged with.
Okay, so Larone and I are sitting here talking about Michael Sam. Viv and Louise walk in, and they're like, you have to ask a lesbian. So, lesbian?
Right. Well, as a longtime pro football fan, I remember watching games back in the 50s when I was a little girl with my parents, and so I've always been a pro football fan. I was delighted when Michael Sam was drafted. I was surprised that he went so far down as 7th round choice, because I felt like he was a better player than that. Of course, Michael Sam, for those listening who don't know, is the first openly gay player to be drafted into the NFL. having come out when he was a senior at the University of Missouri. And he was co-defensive player of the year in the Southeast Conference.
Which is not trivial.
That's not
huge.
trivial. That's huge.
A defensive player, the defensive player of the year in the Southwest Conference has never been drafted that far down.
Southeastern Conference.
Southeastern Conference has not been drafted that far down, at least for the last 10 years or something like that.
Right, and at any rate, for those who don't know, he was cut in the final cut of the St. Louis Rams. The teams have to cut their squad down to 53 players from, gosh, I think it may have been 90 or something like
originally,
that
yeah.
when the season practices started. But at any rate, he was on that last cut, and it looked like that he was kind of teetering on the edge of making it. I believe the Rams gave him a fair chance. I think the reason that he was cut is the Rams had too many defensive ends, defensive backs, and he was a defensive back competing with some of the best defensive backs in pro football. And I sure hope that someone else, some other team, picks him up. We will know today whether another team will pick him up off waivers is the term. He also has an opportunity to play on the practice squad for the Rams if they offer him that. And there are...
That's kind of a backup squad?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the people that the main team practices against.
Like sparring partners.
Right, and the difference is a whole lot of money.
even though $6,000 a week is nothing to sneeze at for us.
Right, it's not, and apparently that's what the backup squad makes.
Yeah,
He
that's
could
the
probably,
minimum.
he
That's
could
the
probably
minimum.
live on that for a while.
Yeah, that's the minimum
Yeah.
that NFL can pay you.
Right, for 17 weeks.
But
or
if somebody or a couple somebody's on the Rams would get injured and he was on the practice field,
They can elevate
They could
him.
elevate him.
Exactly.
Kind of like the baseball players bring him up from the farm teams.
So,
Like a football understudy.
So I certainly hope that he is either picked up for the 53-member squad of another team, because Lord knows there are teams in the NFL who need defensive backs. And,
There's one right here in Dallas.
Right
Yeah.
when in Dallas.
But there are also teams that just need to sell tickets. Dallas Cowboys sells out. Other teams don't necessarily. And the Rams, when they picked him up, developed fans across the country.
His jersey sold like...
It was, I think, the number
Sold out.
2 jersey this summer.
yeah.
But the Rams have developed fans across the country. Whoever picks him up will automatically develop a new fan base.
Well, I downloaded the Rams football app, and I had never been a Rams fan.
Now, I have followed football since I was a kid, also professional football, just like Louise, but I've never followed the St. Louis Rams, which actually used to be the LA Rams. But anyway.
Right, that's right, they did.
That's what I remember as a kid.
Those of us who remember, yes.
But yeah, because of Michael Sam, I became a fan of them.
Sure.
That's right.
Sure.
And I think we do need to mention him being cut is nothing new. A lot of players get cut.
Sure.
They do.
Well, and to his credit, the St. Louis Rams coach said he was drafted based on football,
Exactly.
and he was
was
released
cut.
based on football.
But released based
on
on football. But the problem is his chances of being picked up from another team are somewhat diminished because of the mentality of like the former coach of the Indianapolis Colts, who made a comment just last month that he had no doubt about Michael Sam's ability to play, but he wouldn't have drafted him. He wouldn't have taken him on his team because of the attention, unwanted attention.
We need to take a break. You're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 Knon FM. I'm Dave Taffet here in the studio with the late Pattie Fink, Larone Landis. Our guests are Viv and Louise. We don't need to say anything else.
This is Janice McCall from TCU, and I listen to the Lambda Week on 89.3 KNON FM, Dallas.
And this is Lambda Weekly, and I'm Dave Taffet here in the studio with Thelma and Louise, and the late Pattie.
Fine comparison.
I love that.
We were talking about Michael Sam, but
Michael Sam.
Louise, there was a story that was really a terrible story. Most of the summer, the coverage of Michael Sam treated him kind of as a curiosity, and
Well, once the initial press died down about the kiss, then it was kind of quiet.
Well, right. And until ESPN, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, did this ridiculous, horrible story about Michael Sam's showering habits. And apparently the point they were making is he, I guess, waited till, toward the end of shower time to shower. And David pointed out he was undoubtedly out there working on the field, doing a little extra.
And that's what he said. He was out on the field longer than the other members of the team because he was working that hard to get picked up.
And the coach of the Rams, Jeff Fisher, really raked ESPN over the.
Maybe it was him who said it. I think
Well-
it was actually the coach who said it, not Michael
He said
Sam.
he could be in the weight room, he could have been out on the field practicing, but it wasn't because, he was trying to avoid showering when the other team.
Right.
That's what the whole stupid story, I should say, was even about, because that's such a concern, supposedly, for a lot of other athletes, is the shower
But
issue.
it's okay for them to have women reporters in the shower room.
Exactly. Exactly.
I don't
have
get
for
that.
years.
Exactly.
Sure.
Well, but see, that's the thing. It's
Or
okay.
they don't
if,
have anyone in there.
It's okay if a female is oogling over them, but whatever. So the story was that Michael Sam avoided this by avoiding taking showers with the rest of the teammates, so he went in last. Well, to report the showering habits of any player is just ridiculous. We don't need to know that.
Nobody's interested in it.
Nobody's interested in that.
Well, obviously people
I'll
were.
tell you, a lot of people became interested when ESPN aired the stupid story, and they got well-deserved blowback from everybody, including the Rams head coach Jeff Fisher, and they had to issue an apology.
They did.
Good.
And
A retraction.
yeah, retraction and apology, and hopefully I hope they regretted doing
One
it.
good thing about Michael Sam is we've been through this now. Next
That's
time.
exactly right.
Yeah. Okay, so last week we ran out of time and we were going to talk about, this is our sports segment, we were going to talk about Donald Sterling.
Okay, Donald Sterling, the former NBA owner who blew up in the news this summer because of his outlandish racist comments, who was exposed through his mistress. Well, his mistress now is claiming, this is hard to tell without laughing, but she is claiming that he is gay and that she has never had sex with him and that she was his beard.
Wow.
That's the story.
That's a quote, too.
Yes, exactly.
Is that before or after he had Alzheimer's?
Okay, but here,
But David brought up a legit question, which was,
what did he need a beard for if he was married?
and
Isn't his wife his beard?
But I say that. First of all, if it's true that he is in fact gay, that's how idiotic he is. He and his wife have been separated for some time. So I'm thinking, in his logic, I still need a woman on my arm to keep up the appearances.
Because everyone's so interested in Donald Sterling's sex life
Exactly.
and his romantic life and all
Exactly.
and his life at all.
Exactly. Again, if it's true.
I mean, it's more like, whoever heard of this guy until he started making these stupid comments?
Yeah.
Right.
Just.
Well, his so stupid comment premise was that I don't want other people to see you with black players.
Right.
I don't want other people to see you with any.
99% of his team is black.
Right.
Yeah.
But he didn't want her to be
He
seen.
didn't want her to be seen with him. Yeah.
Yeah, stop taking
Yeah.
pictures of yourself
Yeah.
with these players.
Yeah.
Because
But I have to say, if he is in fact gay, I'm not surprised when I saw the interview.
I don't want to claim him.
I don't want to claim him either.
Exactly.
I don't want to claim him either. But he did look like some crazy old queen when I saw him in an interview.
Right, and it's this interesting phenomena that I think every community has when there is some idiotic thing done on the news or some tragic thing done on the news, a mass shooting, Vivian and I always say, oh, I hope the person wasn't gay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
I totally get
I mean,
that.
And our black friends say we hope they weren't black.
yeah,
Oh,
and-
trust me.
and-
yeah,
We do.
and with Donald Sterling, the Jewish community was saying, yes, he was Jewish, but the person who banned him from basketball was also Jewish.
Oh, was he? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the commissioner.
Yeah, I didn't know the commissioner was Jewish. Okay.
It's like our communities wanting to
Right.
sweep these
right.
people away from us.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Totally get it.
embarrassing when
It is
somebody
It's
embarrassing.
embarrassing.
does that. I think anybody who doesn't do that, it's because they don't think of themselves really as part of a community at all.
Right.
We should take pride in what people in our communities do, and
Yeah.
and I do. Even you, Larone.
Absolutely.
But I do think it's interesting, though, that his rationale, the way it all got started, was his whole "what will other people think."
Right.
I mean, it's just so bizarre to me.
And he's been out there in the public eye, at least locally for all those years. So, I mean,
Well,
Right.
he's won awards from the NAACP. He was about to win another one.
Yeah.
And what will people think? Well, what are people going to think about what you just said?
And we haven't seen the last of him. He was forced to relinquish his team. I think his wife. Well, yeah, his wife owns it now.
No, it's been sold.
Oh, that's right. It has been sold. It has been sold.
Microsoft
completed.
guy.
Microsoft, Steve Ballmer.
But he is suing the NBA. He's fighting this.
yeah.
So
It's
we
nice.
hadn't seen the last of him.
There was a study, and I saw this in a really bad right-wing newspaper, online newspaper. Here's the headline. Lesbians tend to be obese, gay men tend to be toned. The feds have paid close to $3 million trying to figure out why. One of the comments in the story in the third paragraph is, a handful of research papers delivering some small insights into homosexual health. As if, what do we care about those people? I mean, that's really what that sentence is saying. They're saying, they're giving reasons, and I don't agree with their reasons. Gay and lesbian kids were up to 76% less likely than straight youth to play sports on a team. First of all, I disagree with that. I think
totally
they
lesbian
lumped the lesbians and the gays together all of a sudden.
in sports.
Yeah,
I think.
They disavowed that stereotype right there.
Well, but
But
Lesbian
Well,
softball player.
well, right.
I think that might be true for boys.
It
It's
probably
less
is
likely.
for boys,
It didn't say that they couldn't.
but that's not what this says.
Did it say less likely?
It says gay and lesbian kids were up to 76% less likely than
Yeah.
straight youth to play on a sports team. I disagree. I think lesbian youth are twice as likely to play on a sports team.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that I agree with you.
Okay, so then they said.
Well, it's kind of a stereotype, too.
It is.
It is,
Well,
but-
most of this is.
Well,
Once you hear the
sure it
rest.
is. Okay, so gay men tend to think they're fat when they're not, while lesbians have the opposite problem, meaning lesbians think they're thin when they're not. So let's talk to the fattest person in the room, Louise.
Right. I'm definitely, if people could see me, on the thin side. But, right. First of all, why was this money spent?
Well, okay, I get it. They were looking for, they're looking for cures to health problems. If they found that a certain segment of the population tends to be more obese, what are the reasons for it and what can we do about it?
But they have. Everybody in the South. I mean,
I know.
Every article about obesity mentions that the highest percentage of
Obesity
is
is
in the South.
I mean,
Fried food, people.
Well, it's also hot, so it leads to a lot less outdoor activity.
right. In the
Exertion.
Okay, here's the strangest sentence in this article. Compared with exclusively heterosexual males with prior same-sex partners and bisexual males were more likely to self-perceive as overweight despite being a healthy weight or underweight.
I'm sorry,
Back
I'm
up.
confused. Go to the first part.
Heterosexual
You
males.
said exclusively heterosexual, and then you said they had same-sex partners.
No, compared to exclusively heterosexual.
Okay.
Heterosexual males with prior same-sex partners, where do you find that group? I want to have some
At
of
the
them
ex-gay
on.
camp.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is.
I don't know why.
I didn't know it was that many that you could actually find to
spent
interview.
this money.
But
That's
I will
my
say
point.
that perhaps organized sports tend to be a place where some LGBT people, young people, would end up feeling uncomfortable because they feel different, and sometimes they're maybe not self-aware, but they're not comfortable.
Sure.
I think that's the ex-gay movement has made some men feel like they're too fat. You know, I mean that's what that tells me.
Now, this is, it doesn't say this in here. Here's what I'm thinking. That women tend to not be as critical of other women's weight
Right.
and appearance.
In relationships.
In relationships, but even in general. Whereas men, especially heterosexual men, are going to be very critical of women's weights, and so a woman to stay in a relationship keeps her weight down because she has to be perky and beautiful and
In our heterosexual relationship.
in her
Traded in
heterosexual
for a
relationship,
newer model.
or she'll be traded in, right?
Absolutely.
Right. No, absolutely. That's
Yeah, you don't lose that baby weight, you're gone.
whereas heterosexual men, they're saying, are not as toned.
It's true, though.
Yeah, Larone never lost his baby weight.
I did. I still got a husband. I'm surprised.
So, whereas heterosexual men, once they're in a relationship, are not as worried about what other people think about them. They're married. Whereas
they can
gay
use
men,
overweight-
Themselves go.
They do.
whereas gay men in a relationship
food.
or not in a relationship want to look good for the other gay guys. I think it's real simple, but it's not what the study found.
Right.
And I don't agree with
I
the
don't think
study.
it's a study. I think it's air quotes around the word study.
I know.
Maybe.
That's
And I think another thing that's at play here
Poor design.
that they don't even touch upon in that article is what everybody wants to look good, but what people think looks good is different.
This is back to who's hot and who's
Exactly.
not, which we've been doing for years.
Which we've been doing for years.
We haven't done any
Where
of those
these
lately.
guys think that we all thought as lesbians thought that Britney Spears was hot, and we're like, no,
Exactly.
That's what you think.
Exactly.
We think
And
would be
years
hot.
ago, Larone and I went to a concert, a Melissa Etheridge concert with Pattie and Aaron, and we were the only two guys in the audience. And everybody is just screaming and throwing their underwear at her, and they were just going crazy. And Larone and I are sitting back
lesbian
with-
high holy
You know,
days.
we were really enjoying this concert. We
Oh, I
really
loved it.
We
I
loved
loved
this
it.
concert. But we're kind of sitting back going, oh, this is what's hot to lesbians. Oh, and I mean, to us, it was like we were on an anthropological expedition.
Because, yeah, you know, the study, what lesbians think is good looking as far as what a woman should look
Hot.
like, is hot in body image, is totally different than what a heterosexual woman would think is hot and what a woman should look
Well,
like.
then go to some place like up in the Northeast. When Louise and I lived up there in Vermont and we would go shopping, we thought all the women were lesbians because they didn't wear makeup, they didn't do their hair any particular way, and they were wearing
state
plaid,
shirt.
They were plaid flannel shirts.
Right,
and
that's the
jeans
state
and-
shirt in
and stuff.
Vermont.
And it's like, you know, we couldn't tell them until the little kids kept coming up and saying, "Mommy, Mommy," and then Daddy came along, and we go, "Oh, not."
You know, I've been to Vermont, I concur.
But you know, Erin has a theory about this. Erin has a theory about this. Is that she goes, they're not lesbians. They're just rural.
That's right. That's right.
Yep. And another thing we picked up from that was that we were naming off people who we thought were hot as lesbians, who we thought were hot. And I loved it. And Erin was talking about, you know, attitude. It's mostly attitude. But I loved the straight man who was driving through town who called in and said, Sigourney Weaver. You haven't mentioned Sigourney Weaver. We're like, yes, Sigourney Weaver. Yes. You know, because it's everybody's perceptions are different.
Jamie Lee
Exactly.
Curtis.
Jamie Lee Curtis. I did have a crush on her when I was a kid.
See?
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
See?
So
Okay.
we should do another show like that. Yeah.
We will start collecting those. One other little news item. Neil Abercrombie, who's the governor of Hawaii, who was a champion for marriage equality. He's like one of only 2 or 3 governors. The governor of Illinois pushed the legislation through. The governor of New York pushed their legislation through. That's been rare. But Neil Abercrombie was one of those people who took over from a governor who was completely against. He pushed it through, and he just lost his primary this week by a 2-to-1 margin. Now, there was a big crossover vote because they're allowed, you can vote in any primary. The Republican candidate for governor had an interesting comment. He said, I'm glad he credits Hawaii with having that many Republicans that we can make a difference. But here's what Neil Abercrombie said. They asked him if he would do anything different if he knew that this is how it would turn out. He said, where is my quote? There's no way I could live with myself if I thought I was diminishing another human being's ability to reach their full capacity.
Wow.
He said, absolutely, he would do nothing different at all.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hats off to him.
Yeah.
That's somebody whose decision and heart was in the right place.
Mm-hmm. Good ethics in politics for once.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thelma, Louise, I want to thank you for being here with us.
Cheers to you and to all of y'all that are watching.
Come back and see us again.
Oh, yeah. We love to come back.
We love having you.
And by the way, before we leave, we're going to make our pledge with $50 check to KNON.
Thank you both
You're
so
wonderful.
much.
Thank you so
we
much.
always appreciate you.
Thank you.
Anybody else who would like to just go to the knon.org and click on the pledge button. Next week, our guest is Blair High. She runs the GEAR program, the transgender program over at Resource Center. She's doing some amazing creative things there that nobody else in the country is doing. For all of us here at Lambda Weekly, we'll see you next week.
KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to knon.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.